The House Transportation Infrastructure Committee will come to order. Will the clerk please take attendance?
Chair Outman.
Here.
Representatives Alexander.
Here.
Kara.
Here.
Brock.
Present.
Kuhn.
Present.
Neyer.
Here.
Preston.
Here.
Bonak.
Here.
Frisbee.
Here.
Wertz.
Here.
Hersberg.
Here.
Hope. Here. Colazar.
Here.
Andrews.
Here.
Grant.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
Wilson. Mr. Chair, you have 17 members present. You do have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Representative Alexander moves to adopt the minutes of the May 20th meeting. There being no objection, the minutes are adopted. First on the agenda today is voting on House Bill 4426 from a couple weeks ago. Representative Kara moves to report House Bill 4426 with recommendation. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Chair Outman.
Yes.
Representatives Alexander.
Yes.
Kara.
Yes.
Brock.
Yay.
Kuntz.
Aye.
Neyer.
Yes.
Preston.
Yes.
Bonak.
Yes.
Frisbee.
Yes.
Wertz.
Yes.
Hersberg.
No.
Hope.
Pass.
Colazar.
Yes.
Andrews.
Yes.
Grant. Pass. Yes. Miller.
Yes.
Wilson.
Pass.
Mr. Chair, you have 13 yeas, 1 nay, 3 pass. House Bill 4426 is reported with recommendation.
House Bill 4426 is reported with recommendation. Next up, we're going to be hearing from Representative Kuhn on House Bill 4415. But first, we will be adopting a sub for the bill. Representative Brock makes a motion to adopt substitute H1 for House Bill 4415. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Chair Outman.
Yes.
Representatives Alexander.
Yes.
Kara.
Yes.
Brock.
Yay.
Kuntz.
Aye.
Neyer.
Yes.
Preston.
Yes.
Bonak.
Yes.
Frisbee.
Yes.
Wertz.
Yes.
Hersberg.
Yes.
Hope.
Yes.
Colazar.
Yes.
Andrews.
Yes.
Grant.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Wilson.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 17 yeas, 0 nays, and 0 pass. The substitute is adopted.
All right, Representative Kuhn, please proceed whenever you're ready, sir. Bringing up Ed with you as well? That's fine.
Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Chair Outman and committee members for the opportunity to speak today on our House Bill 4415 and the substitute language which you've already adopted today. This bill updates a decades-old statute to reflect the current market realities for road commissions across Michigan. Most trucks purchased today by county road commissions, particularly those needed for snow removal, maintenance, emergency response, routinely cost well over $50,000. The substitute raises the bidding threshold to $75,000, which better matches today's vehicle prices and reduces unnecessary delays in procurement. Importantly, the bill also increases flexibility for county road commissions to respond in emergency situations. If a commission can't act quickly due to an outdated bidding rules, it's not just a paperwork problem, it becomes a safety issue. Finally, the substitute adjusts vehicle weight classifications in a way that provides purchasing flexibility for standard work trucks while still requiring the full transparency and oversight for heavier duty purchases. This bill is a common sense update that helps local government operate more efficiently and more safely. I urge the committee's support and look forward to answering your questions.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. In a nutshell, this bill is just basically an economic adjustment bill. The rates or the thresholds that were created 20 years ago and 20 years before that, they need to be updated from time to time. What we've introduced here is a level that will allow us to not only buy necessary material and some office equipment, tools, et cetera, but it also gives us the ability to replace a large pickup truck should that be involved in an accident or the engine or the transmission is blown and there's no real cost efficiency to replace that. It's probably better off to buy a new vehicle. That's why we had to adjust the weight limit and increase the cost for the single purchase. A naked or a bland F10 or excuse me F-150 or F-250, they're going to be pretty pricey, and we still have to put other things on it to make it usable for the road commissions and the road departments, not just commissions. Those 7 road departments that that are our members too. Again, this is just an efficiency thing, and if you read that section of the law, this is to promote efficiency. That's the start of this section that we're talking about. So this is an efficiency issue, and we appreciate you taking the bill up. CRA supports the bill, along with some other members.
Excellent. Well, thank you both. Very old statute you guys are amending. And you said it's been revised since then. You said the last time that these numbers have been adjusted was about 20 years ago?
It was in 2005. It was raised, and 1984 it was raised for the first time from 5 and 10 to 10 and 20.
Sure. We'll open up to questions. Do we have any questions from the members? You guys must have done a really good job. I don't see any questions. Again, thank you both for being here and for testifying on your bill. Appreciate it. I'm going to read in some cards real quickly. Not wishing to speak, supporting the bill, Dennis Kolar, the Road Commission for Oakland County. Not wishing to speak, supporting the bill, Samantha Gibson, Michigan Association of Counties. Okay. Next up, we have House Bill 4424 and 4425. And we also have a substitute to adopt for House Bill 4425. So Representative Kuhn makes a motion to adopt the substitute H1 for House Bill 4425. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Chair Outman.
Yes.
Representatives Alexander,
Yes.
Kara,
Yes.
Bruck,
Yay.
Kuntz,
Aye.
Neyer,
Yes.
Preston,
Yes.
Bonet,
Yes.
Frisbee,
Yes.
Wertz,
Yes.
Hersberg,
Yes.
Hope,
Yes.
Colazar,
Yes.
Andrews,
Yes.
Grant,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Wilson.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 17 yeas, 0 nays, and 0 pass. The substitute is adopted.
Excellent. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Representative, do you want to proceed to the table? And begin whenever you're ready, Rep. Neyer.
Thank you, Chair and Committee. Thank you for this opportunity to speaking today on House Bills 44, 24, and 25, which would establish a sustainable aviation fuel incentive program that will help agriculture producers play a center role in our state's future of green energy. For those of you who don't know, sustainable aviation fuel is a blend of 50% jet fuel and 50% ethanol grown from crops cultivated by farmers. Currently, our airlines want to use clean burning fuel to meet their CO2 and other green energy requirements. But here in Michigan, there's currently no supply chain in order to provide that. Our goal here with this package is to encourage farmers and blenders to create the needed supply chain within our state for production. Incentivizing this production for sustainable aviation fuel would give Michigan farmers a new revenue stream for their crops instead of relying on the volatile commodity prices. In tandem, this package would also promote rural development by allowing development of expanding ethanol production facilities and also blending facilities, which we currently do not have in the state. You know, we can it comes down to the bottom line here. This is an opportunity where we can take another product off in the corn crop and produce what we need within the state. Other states are moving this way. Illinois is currently set up to do this. Our airline industry can either buy this product from out of state and have it blended out of state, or we can provide the opportunity here with this tax incentive there to allow our farmers and our ethanol producers here in the state to participate in this market and get a leg up on the industry. So I would ask for your support, and I'd be glad to take any questions.
Well, thank you, Representative. I'll start out with a couple of questions myself. You talked about why this tax incentive is needed. Let's talk about the benefit. How quickly do you anticipate this incentive program, how quickly do you anticipate that it could lead to measurable production of sustainable aviation fuel, and what impact do you think that might have on the cost of aviation fuel for Michigan airports and airlines?
I can't talk on the cost of what it's going to do. They are going to be required to, aviation industry is going to be required to reduce their CO2 emissions. This is a simple plug and play. We don't have to retool the engines. We don't have to create different storage facilities. This ethanol works right in with the normal fuel systems that they have. What we don't have here is the blending and the production facilities that can produce that specific type of ethanol that is burned in those machines. What this will do is encourage investment within the state as opposed to allowing Detroit to have to go out of state to purchase their fuel supply.
Now, how quickly do you anticipate this program could lead to measurable production of this sustainable aviation fuel?
I think it would probably take 2 to 3 years for it to get to full production. Our incentive program there is encouraging it within the first year of $4.1 million for an incentive, and thereafter, as it expands, it'll increase to $9 million per year for a 10-year period.
Does this bill include a sunset clause?
At the end of 10 years, yes.
Oh, excellent. Okay. I didn't see that in there. I was kind of scouring through it early this morning.
Yeah, it would, but yeah, there would be a sunset clause. The idea long-term there is to just get incentive to get it going. Once this is in place there, look at the end of 10 years, my hope is that we would not have to incentivize it after that.
Okay. Yeah, I would think at some point the industry could stand on its own legs after a period of time. We'll open it up to other questions from members, starting with Vice Chair Alexander.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Typical weights and measures is taken care of at the fuel pump by Department of Agriculture. Why would you entrust Eagle to take care of this program versus Department of Agriculture?
I believe the aviation has been the fuel standards has been run through Eagle before, but I'd have to check up on that, as this is it's different than the fuel that's used at the fuel pump for ethanol blends for cars and trucks.
Representative Brock.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Neyer, being here today. And it was a pleasure to be with you on the top of the bridge last week. That was awesome.
Didn't get arrested.
I got a couple questions unrelated to the bridge. As far as the credits, the ethanol that is used in vehicle fuel versus aviation fuel, is it the same ethanol?
It's different. The consistency, and also there'll be others to speak to it a little bit more clearly. It burns hotter, and so it takes a different type of distilling operation in order to achieve the requirements for aviation fuel or for jet fuel.
Okay, so it would be, because I know there's some plants that were shuttered, South Michigan, the soybean ethanol plants, because they just couldn't make it economically. And I guess my question kind of revolves around that. How would this tax credit be able to support that industry to get that ball rolling?
It would help support the investment into the plant. A lot of our ethanol plants could produce it, but it'd be another stage that they would have to add on to the plant itself in order to get that desired standard that is needed to meet the aviation standards. It's possible that they could also open up an old plant and get it going. There are a couple of shuttered plants here in the state. But a standing operation could add this on as another product line, but it would they'd have to have a reason to do it. And I'm hoping that this incentive would give them, at least help cover some of the startup costs to do that.
Mm-hmm. And do you know what the requirement is? I know at the gas pump, up to 10% can be ethanol, and that's kind of that magic number. What is the federal government? This is a federal requirement for the aviation fuel, correct?
This bill speaks to a 50-50 blend of jet fuel and ethanol.
And that's the federal, right? That will be the
I
federal
believe so.
dictated.
There'll be a couple of people that come up here from the corn growers that can address that specific, I think.
Oh, right. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Representative Preston, still have a question?
If there's more testimony, I can hold mine.
Okay. Representative Miller.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Neyer, for working on this incredibly important bill. This creates a new stable market, as you are certainly aware of. My question is, what support from the airlines do you have, and who exactly is that?
Nothing specific, but they are underneath requirements to meet these standards, and they're going to have to purchase the product from someplace. Illinois is
But they
ready.
support it.
Yeah, it is supported. They've got to do this. They've got to reduce their CO2 somehow. And Illinois is one state that's already has a program in place to help do that and have blenders ready to go. I'd just like to have Michigan be able to have that market, especially with a big hub like our Detroit airport. A lot of fuel
Absolutely.
goes out of there, and I'd like to see those planes leaving with our corn in their tanks.
I don't see them using batteries for a while.
No.
Thank you.
Nope.
Does Iowa have a program, Representative?
They are working on it. Legislation-wise there, I don't think anything has passed.
Interesting. We'll go now to Representative Andrews.
Thank you, Chair. Are there any concerns with other competing technologies? I know, obviously, batteries for airplanes are ways off, but hydrogen has been in the conversation pretty recently for heavy aircraft, that sort of thing. Any concerns that we ramp this up, production ramps up, and then a competing technology kind of drops, and we've built this whole industry and it gets out-competed?
Well, from what I understand, there are other technologies require serious retooling on the aircraft, so you'd have to revamp the aircraft in order to do it, or at least the engines on it there. This is something that literally drops into the tank and is ready to go. You don't have to modify the engines in any way. So this here, when you look at a lifespan of an airplane of 25 years plus, this is a simple fix to meet those requirements without having to modify everything along the line.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the bill sponsor? Well, I have one final question for you, Representative, and that is the bill specifies that after January 1, 2030, sustainable aviation fuel must be derived from domestic feedstock resources. Could you elaborate on that just a little bit?
That being not imported, as opposed, we don't want to be importing ethanol or from other countries. So that would be domestic. I think means within the country, not importing from out of country.
Okay, that's all it's referring to then?
Right.
Okay. Just wanted to get some clarity on that.
Yeah.
Okay, Representative, thank you so much for your testimony. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Next up, we have wishing to speak, supporting the bill, Chase from the Clean Fuels Michigan. Please proceed whenever you're ready, sir.
Thank you, Chair Outman, and members of the committee for the opportunity to speak. And thank you, Representative Neyer, for your leadership on this issue. My name is Chase Atanasio. I'm a policy manager with Clean Fuels Michigan. We're a nonprofit trade association. We work with businesses in the state working to accelerate the deployment of clean mobility technologies. I'm here today to express our support for House Bills 4424 and 4425, which establish an incentive for the production and use of sustainable aviation fuel here in Michigan. These bills represent a smart and timely opportunity for Michigan to lead in a growing sector with massive economic and strategic value. Sustainable aviation fuel has the potential to be a significant economic driver for the state. By making SAF more cost competitive with conventional jet fuel, this incentive helps spur demand for this innovative fueling technology. Doing so will drive infrastructure investment and support job creation across multiple sectors, from the agricultural and feedstock industries to construction, manufacturing, and the aviation sector. These are all areas where Michigan has demonstrated significant strength already, and providing this incentive to increase the adoption of sustainable aviation fuel holds potential for massive expansion as well. These incentives will also help the aviation sector in Michigan prepare for the future. SAF offers a practical solution to help ensure the long-term viability of Michigan's aviation sector. As airlines and logistic providers search for new innovative fueling solutions, Michigan needs to be positioned to keep pace. Supporting SAF now will help airports, fuel providers, and other operators remain competitive. These incentives also send a clear market signal to the private sector that Michigan is ready to lead on advanced fuels, supporting Michigan's energy security, operational efficiency, and the broader sustainability of our transportation and aviation economies. On behalf of Clean Fuels Michigan, again, I want to thank Representative Neyer for your leadership on this issue and to the committee for taking up these bills. We look forward to working with you to support Michigan's growing clean fuel economy. Thank you again for your time, and I'm happy to take questions if there are any.
Thank you, Chase. Do we have any questions? Do you have one? Representative Kara.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your testimony. With the Chinese Communist Party, Bill Gates, and their friends buying up more farmland, is there any concern that we could have that using corn and soil products for fuel, that we might put a further detriment on our food supply nationwide and globally?
Yeah, I think when we talk about using our agricultural feedstocks for transportation fuel, whether or not we're displacing our feedstocks that feed our families at the table is an issue that comes up. But I think when we talk with stakeholders that are on the ground, whether it's the farmers or I know Michigan Corn Growers is going to speak later, a lot of their interest in participating in these types of programs is because they're already doing a lot of this work. For example, farmers and stakeholders we've talked to in Michigan, Representative Neyer had hinted at, they're looking in other states like Illinois, Nebraska, Washington, where these programs already exist, and they're sending their feedstocks there. So we're really, I see this program as rewarding farmers and other stakeholders and feedstock producers for the work that they're already doing. I think, I'm not exactly sure, what you're referring to specifically with the Chinese Communist Party or Bill Gates. I think, we want to make sure that, I think the way that this program is structured will support, Michigan farmers and the work that they're doing, make sure that it provides additional markets for them to participate in an additional part of the economy.
There certainly are, if I may, competing forces seeking to buy up farmland in Michigan and throughout our nation. Do you have any numbers on what percentage of our yield for corn and soy will go towards this fuel as opposed to food components?
I don't currently, but I'd be happy, I can definitely look into that and get back to your office with some of those, with some of that data.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And Rep. Carr, the Corn Growers Association is in fact going to be testifying. They might be able to speak to those questions.
I'll ask them.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Rep. Preston, do you want to reserve your question, or do you want to ask it? Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for being here today. My question is just around, I think it's germane to the issue, but safety. Black mold with biodiesel is still an issue that's going on. It hasn't been solved, in the transportation market. It still hasn't been solved in the aviation market. With the fact that biojet fuel, which is basically a hybrid of diesel fuel, is still prone to water absorption. It burns much dirtier than standard jet fuel. I don't know where we're trying to go. It's hygroscopic in nature, which means it absorbs water, which takes a burden on the engine components. if black mold gets into the tanks, the holding tanks, or the tanks on the plane, it's almost impossible to get out. I've owned one station and helped with another station that had a black mold infestation from biodiesel that was 25% in saturation. This is a 50%. I'm assuming what you're promoting is 50% bio, 50% standard aviation jet fuel.
That's the top limit for a blend of sustainable aviation.
What's your mitigation strategies for all of the issues that come with bio? We're talking about jet planes in the air, 30,000 feet. If a filter clogs at 30,000 feet, you're in big trouble.
Yeah. I think with any new technology, when we're talking about transportation fuel, it comes with new norms and practices. And in addition to adopting the technology, we need to make sure that the airlines and the technicians and the people who are servicing the airplanes and in the production facilities, that they have the skills and tools that they need to be able to service the equipment at the appropriate manner, recognizing that sustainable aviation fuel, though it is a drop-in fuel, has different behaviors than traditional jet fuel. And we need to prepare the service providers and the other mechanics and technicians in this sector to be able to prepare for and prevent issues like that I think you're speaking to. And I would also disagree with the argument that sustainable aviation fuel burns dirtier than traditional jet fuel. I think one of the additional benefits, if we see, the reason that other industries and other states are pursuing this is because in communities that have these airports, sustainable aviation fuel burns cleaner because it is a biomass. The public health outcomes in those communities are benefited because the air quality in those areas where sustainable aviation fuel is adopted at larger amounts and improves.
But it emits far higher nitrous oxide and nitrous monoxide levels, and it also burns far less efficient in cold weather. And when you burn far less efficient, you're exhausting many more hydrocarbons. So it's actually factual that it doesn't burn as effectively as standard aviation fuel.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Preston. I just got comfortable with air travel, and now you're throwing a wrench in there. Any other questions for Chase while we're up here? All right. Thank you so much for your testimony. I really appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Okay, next up, wishing to speak, supporting the bill, Sarah Gonzalez, Delta Airlines.
Don't worry, Mr. Chair. Air travel is still the safest form of transportation on the planet. So thank you, Mr. Chair and members, for the opportunity to be here today. We are grateful for the leadership of Representative Neyer in the House and Senator Singh and Bellino in the Senate for sponsoring this legislation, and the more than 25 bipartisan co-sponsors of this bill across both chambers. We have a broad coalition of stakeholders who you'll see here today, from producers to farmers and everybody up and down that value chain, who are supporting passing Michigan's sustainable aviation fuel legislation. For those of you who haven't had the opportunity to meet yet, my name is Sarah Gonzalez. I'm the Director of State and Local Government Affairs for Delta Airlines. I'm a Michigander based here. Delta Airlines is the largest commercial air carrier in the state. We service 12 airports. We have 6,000 employees in the state, and we carry passengers, 23 million passengers annually to destinations across the globe. We are a consumer brand. Everything that we do is in an effort to ensure a safe, efficient, reliable, and now sustainable travel experience for our customers. We are a very hard to decarbonize sector, but we've set a goal for ourselves. It's a goal that we've set for ourselves of achieving net carbon emissions in airline operations by 2050. It's our moonshot. The way we're going to get there is to pull every single lever that we have available to us, both now and in the future. As was mentioned before, with 90% of our emissions coming from jet fuel, sustainable aviation fuel, or SAF, is not just a big lever, but really the only lever that we have available available to us to help move towards a more sustainable future. The issue is there is not enough available SAF to meet demand for even a week currently. And SAF is expensive. It's about 2 to 10 times more expensive at the moment. As was mentioned before, I don't want to get on a plane that's powered by batteries today. We can't do that and expect those planes to travel the world. Similarly, hydrogen is being explored, but it's quite a bit far off, and the infrastructure challenges are tremendous and would not be something that could be attainable by a global carrier today. I do want to, one comment that was asked if this is a short-term solution, a flash in the pan. No, we are talking about sustainable aviation is here for the next 100 years. This is the solution. It's for this generation. It's for my children's, my children and my grandchildren as well. As was said before, SAF can be produced from numerous feedstocks options, including existing agricultural resources, including corn, soybean, cover crops, forestry residue, municipal solid waste, and clean hydrogen. As was also mentioned, I won't belabor the point, but SAF is that drop-in fuel. It's here today, the 50% of SAF blended with 50% of traditional jet fuel, and it's ready to go into our planes right now with no modifications needed in the transportation, no modifications needed in the airplane. And that really does help with the scaling up of this industry that was also discussed. For the fact I'm not even sure most people realize, but for the first time this past year, Michigan aviation history, SAF was delivered to Detroit Metropolitan Airport and used in Delta flights. It was a shipment of more than 7,000 gallons of gas. It was delivered by existing pipeline directly to DTW with a collaboration of partners and dropped directly into planes. And the numbers are staggering. We're on a tremendous journey. We use, just to set things into perspective, Delta Airlines last year used about 4 billion gallons of jet fuel. And we have set a goal of 10% of SAF by 2030, with net zero requiring all 4 billion gallons of our jet fuel to be replaced by 2050. And it's not just a Delta goal. I'm here representing Delta, but all major U.S. carriers have committed to achieving net carbon zero by 2050. To kind of break those numbers down to you, Delta alone will go from purchasing 300 million gallons of SAF this past year to that 4 billion gallons of SAF over the next 20 years. And that's only because that was the SAF that we had available to us. Minnesota, Indiana, Illinois, Nebraska, Washington, Iowa, and California have all passed SAF tax credits, and Michigan is in danger of being left out of the economic benefits a SAF economy will bring, including creating jobs, like I said, long-term industry here in the state. And then also by supporting farmers, and won't elaborate there because you have the wonderful, John from the Michigan Corn Growers Association who's going to speak and is much more versed in this than I am. But no one at this point has cornered the market on SAF. And we truly believe that Michigan has all the right tools, everything that all the other states have that have introduced and passed SAF legislation at our fingertips, and really giving us the opportunity to be, not a leader, but the leader in this new market, particularly because we are a port state. We are very lucky that we are a port state. And that is why it's critical that we partner with the federal, state, and local partners to create this SAF ecosystem in Michigan, and that starts with voting yes on these bills. But thank you for your time, and happy to answer any questions you have, including some, I think, that were shared previously.
Okay. Well, thank you, Sarah, first off. Don't mean to put you in the hot seat, but as an airline, have you guys discussed some of the concerns that Representative Preston laid out? Just in regards to safety and engine components, all that sort of stuff.
Absolutely. I mean, I think first and foremost, safety is the number one priority of not just Delta Airlines, but every airline. We are competitive in many different spaces. Safety, not one of them. We don't have an operation if we don't have safety. So we do cross-collaborate across all avenues of safety perspective. We work with the federal government on the requirements that are necessary for the usage of SAF in the right blend that is critical to making sure that our planes are flying in the safest way possible. We would never put a plane in the air if we didn't go through all the rigorous processes. And in addition to having those processes, they're constantly reevaluated.
Thank you so much for that. And Representative Preston, do you want to add on to that?
Thank you, Chair. Does Delta have any process in place to inspect both the delivery tanks as well as the receiving tanks on the jets?
Absolutely. There's multiple processes that go through this, especially we are we're regulated at the federal level. So there's layers upon layers of that. And I'm happy to connect you with some of our experts in this space if you wanted to talk more in depth. Absolutely.
Okay, I'm just looking for the whatever SOGs or SOPs are in place to actually analyze whether or not you've got, a bio problem going on in your tanks, because I've gone through it twice. It's an insidious problem. Biodiesel does hold on to a lot of microbes that feed organics and a lot of water.
Yeah.
So it's a ripe area for microbe growth, especially at the 50-50 level. It occurred to my tank and another storage tank at 15%.
Yeah.
So again, and I've not been able to find any data that besides biocides that the problems have been solved.
I'm happy to connect you with our experts. Thankfully, to all of you who travel, they don't have me in that line of the work to go through all the details, but I'd be happy to put you in touch with our experts in that field because, again, I don't have a job. Delta doesn't have an airline if safety is not our number one priority.
That is true.
Yeah. Thank you, Representative. And let's connect with some of those experts and kind of walk through that because I'm kind of curious too myself. Any other questions for Sarah? Representative Kuhn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ma'am, thanks for coming today. I don't know if this is a question FAA related. I have assumed they have approved this, the federal,
Yes.
at 50%.
Absolutely. And written in the legislation, we outline the GREET model, which is just the acronym that we adhere to for the safety regulations. So it's been approved at the federal level in every other piece of legislation that's been introduced and passed in states across the country. That is the model that they use. It's really the pinnacle to make sure that we're all abiding by appropriate safety level issues. And oh, go ahead.
This is almost an unfair question, maybe related to Pratt & Whitney. I assume your engine suppliers have signed off on this. There have been studies on the lubricity of the ethanol.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we're green across the board. Nobody has.
No,
one,
people are using it in planes right now. I mean, every drop of, every plane that's flying out of California right now, our planes has at least a drop of SAF in it. It's just a matter of the fact that California passed SAF incentives many years ago, and so SAF production has been able to ramp up, and so it's drawn in the SAF production there, and there's none available for the rest of us.
And very quickly, if I may, Mr. Chair, how long have we been running on sustainable aviation fuel?
I can get you a good answer. I mean, because California has been doing it for many years, so I'll get you an answer on that.
So I'm going to ask how long and what the blend is, please, and thank you.
Absolutely. I believe it's been 50-50 consistently since then, but I will get you both of those.
Thank you, ma'am.
No, thank you.
Representative Wirtz.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for being here today. I have two questions. My first one is, it mentions in the bill that this is going to be essentially monitored at the state level by Eagle. Are you guys comfortable with that? Do you feel like they're timely in their responses with you? And are you favorable to them? Or as pointed out, would it be better run through some other state entity?
Yeah, completely comfortable with Eagle. I know that those, decisions are often discussed, but I do have a lot of respect for the individuals we've been working with Eagle, and I know that some of them are here today because throughout this process they have been, doing outreach on this to learn as much as possible so that they're ready with the information, to be grounded and being, ready to lift this up and work on implementation as, should this bill pass. So, and looking to the other states that have already passed this legislation.
Okay, and my second question is, so in the states that you've seen it implemented, is there anything you guys are doing as a give back to the producer, the farmer? I have a farm background. My biggest concern on these is that it's great to create a market, but like this year we saw corn prices at an all-time low. Historically, we had a bumper crop, so that's supply and demand somewhat issue. But how does this money, the credit we're giving to you, a corporation, help a farmer on 200 acres trying to make a living?
Right. Well, and just to clarify, that the credit actually goes to the organization or business that either is producing or blending the SAF. It does not go directly to a Delta Airlines. We work through the process with them, I can give you an answer, but I do believe that John will give you a much better answer from the Corn Growers Association and a much more honest answer from, also being a farmer himself.
Looks like we have one question left, Sarah, and that is from Representative Brock.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, again. So it is a federal requirement, just to clarify, or will be a federal requirement?
Not a federal requirement. There is a federal SAF incentive available. So we would be able to combine a state incentive along with the federal incentive. And it is, we adhere to the guidelines of like what the actual component is of the sustainable aviation fuel. So it's the 50% of the sustainable aviation fuel mixed with 50% of traditional jet. There's, a lot of different regulations and guidelines that go into that process, and that is controlled at the FAA level.
And this particular legislation is not requiring that 50-50 either at a state level. It's just making the means to try to get to that point.
Within the legislation, it is a requirement that we achieve that 50-50 level.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, I believe that's all the questions we have for you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And I just want to commend you guys. You guys are my favorite airline. I've had nothing but great experiences.
I
And
cannot
wanna
give
commend
you
you guys.
upgrades. I can only give you Biscoff.
Perfect. Next up, we have wishing to speak, supporting the bill, Michigan Corn Growers Association. You guys want to make your way up?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Scott Piggott. I serve as the Executive Director of the Michigan Corn Growers Association. We're here to offer our support for House Bills 44, 24, and 25. Wanted to say thank you to the committee for listening to our testimony, as well as to our sponsor, Representative Neyer. We're very excited about this, and to speak on the organization's behalf is John Delmati, the President of the Michigan Corn Growers Association. John?
Good afternoon. Thank you all for your time and attention to these important bills, the impact that it will have. John Delmati, currently serving as the president of the Michigan Corn Growers Association. Our farm is located in central Monroe County in Raisonville Township in Representative Miller's district. We grow corn, soybeans, and wheat, family operation. Actually, I consider myself actually a first-generation farmer. My grandpa farmed. My dad left the farm to pursue a full-time job outside that industry, and I'm the first generation coming back to it. So, our staff prepared a written testimony, and they're probably going to cringe at the fact that I'm probably not going to use that here. But I recognize all of your abilities to read and your staff, and so I'll allow you to go through those details yourself because. I think I have a little bit more of a personal viewpoint to put on this. As has been said, obviously this bill, promotes ethanol-based jet fuel as well as other based jet fuels, whether that's soybean oil, covercress. There are many options to get to jet a fuel that is bio-based. This fuel does actually make a massive reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. We know that. We've seen that from the ethanol industry itself when we look at tailpipe emissions. So, from our standpoint, as growers, we recognize that there are definitely environmental impacts to using sustainable aviation fuel. Other folks here have certainly testified to that, and I'm not going to go through those details. But what I am going to go through are some of the questions regarding using, basically food as fuel. Michigan farmers, as well as farmers across the country, have proven time and again our resiliency and our ability to produce more with less. State government and the federal government has challenged us to grow more with less inputs and do it more responsibly. A report last week that I read in my specific area addressed the Lake Erie watershed. And that report suggests that the algae blooms in that watershed are reducing. They're less and less, which is a goal that we have been working on for more than a decade. That's to say and to prove that we have done our part as growers to reduce our inputs and to continue to grow an abundant crop. Right now, we have a surplus of corn, and that's what I'm here to talk about today. I grow corn on my farm, and this year, I finished planting my crop last year, around 600 acres of corn, and I planted every acre of that, knowing and understanding there's a darn good chance that I'm going to do it and lose money doing it. And I would suggest that most of you, if you were to go back and talk to your constituents, probably don't have many people that show up to work Monday through Friday or Monday through Sunday, in most cases on the farm, knowing they're going to lose money, probably not get a paycheck. So let me walk through the numbers. I take into account every aspect of growing a corn crop on my farm. That's everything from seed, fertilizer, chemicals, all the way down to the cost of machinery. The only thing that I do not include in that calculation is a paycheck to me. Today, that cost on my farm is about $4.50 a bushel. At the close of the market yesterday, Chicago Board of Trade, our local elevator bid for fall delivery of corn was $3.76. So let's do some quick math. On my farm alone, there's a pretty good chance that I'm going to lose about $80,000 on that crop alone this year. My wife and I have 6 children, and those kids are kind of dependent on dad and mom to make a living. And my wife is a school teacher, thank God for her income. But right now, the farm economy is pretty stressed. And I think it's pretty easy for you to sit here and say, well, this is going to be great for Delta. Yep, it's going to help them meet their emissions. This is going to be great for the fuel blenders. Yep, it's going to be great for them. The reality is it's great not only for the farmers, but all of rural Michigan. I've got a tractor. I need to replace 4 front tires on that tractor. About $5,000. Should have been done this spring. I didn't do it. You know why? Because it's not in the budget. So now, the economics of farming didn't just stop at my farm gate. They went to the tire guy, who my tire guy is a guy about my age with kids at home also. And I'm one farm. And it doesn't stop there. It's this car salesman. It's the FFA chapter and the 4-H club that depend on donations that we do not have to give right now. And these stresses are real on farms right now. My family's experiencing them. And I'm going to share something personal because this really hurts my pride, but it's something I've got to give up. My birthday was in April, and my oldest daughter, who's 11, made me a card. And I opened up the card, and inside that card was this $20 bill. She knows we're stressed. Now, I kept it, and I told her, you don't have to give me that. She says, Dad, I know you need some help. I'm not here to give you a BS story. And I'm sure there's a lot of other people that can come in here, Representative Preston, there's a lot of people that come in here and address facts that you need to know. And I'm okay with that. The facts, around the questions you have. But these are facts too. These are people that you represent, that you've made a commitment to represent, that aren't just in inner cities, but they're all across the state, who right now recognize that this type of legislation is probably the best thing we've seen in years to bolster rural economies. We grind more corn, and we create that demand for that product, and now we bolster rural America. We bolster our family farms and the communities that they support. And so while there's a lot of other facts that I could give you, I think there are very qualified people here that can answer those questions, but they probably have a harder time answering the question than I do. Why in the world would a corn farmer be so passionate about an issue that most of the time doesn't affect me, about flying an airplane? But that's why. And so I'll yield the floor back.
Thank you so much, John. We really appreciate your testimony and appreciate you going off the cuff. And just to reiterate, their written testimony is on the committee website. But I just want to echo a lot of your sentiments. I've spoken to corn growers back in my own district, and they're really struggling right now. And that's why that's part of the reason why they're scrambling to sign all these wind and solar leases. And, we want to prevent that. And Rep. Carr, you talk about giving up farm ground. Well, that's a big component of it. And this could help alleviate a lot of those pressures. But one question I have, and you probably mentioned this in your testimony, so I apologize if this is a little redundant, but what is the current price of corn right now per bushel?
I believe fall delivery on the Chicago Board of Trade is hovering right around $4. Obviously, what happens is further from our markets that we are, there's a component of that cash price called basis. That's the difference between what the local elevator pays and what the Chicago Board of Trade is. That basis factors in transportation and other factors like that.
Yeah.
So that $3.76 number is factoring in that basis. That's what they're paying locally. So the benefit to this is, just to elaborate quickly, is that when we create that demand within the state and the potential for actually producing alcohol to jet from ethanol in our state, what happens is we start to reduce that basis because there's local demand for that corn. And so that's a big benefit there in and of itself.
What is the break-even point for you guys?
So again, as I mentioned earlier, right now our cost is roughly $4.50 a bushel based on the yield that our farm produces. So for us, that's we kind of figure an average of 180 bushels per acre. So I take that total cost and divide it by those typical average, and that's how I come up with that number.
Gotcha. We are going to move on to some further questions from members. We'll start with Representative Kara.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll ask you the same question I asked earlier with the Chinese Communist Party and Bill Gates buying up farmland and this pressure and competition for who's going to utilize the farmland for what. Do you have any numbers on what percentage of corn and soy yield will go towards the SAF products?
That's a little bit ambiguous from the standpoint that if we were to today, and I can only talk for today. Now, the future, obviously, that's something I don't have the answer to. But right now, if we wanted to produce that 50% blend across the country, even globally, we don't grow enough. That's being honest. What this does, I think, is what's ultimately we're trying to do is, again, increase that demand. So to your point, when you talk about outside entities wanting to invest in farmland, they have other thoughts. Someone mentioned solar, wind. They see those types of investments. I think my thought process on this is that if we create that demand, I think, which is what you're referring to, ultimately that allows us who farm and our families to invest in that competitively with those outside folks, whether it's Gates or whomever.
And I want corn growers to outcompete Chinese Communist Party and or Bill Gates, to be clear.
We appreciate that.
And if we didn't have the reserve currency of the world and an artificially strong dollar, given our fiscal irresponsibility as a nation, you'd be able to export more of your products to other countries. And I think that is an integral part of what we should look at with this overall dynamic. And we give all these corporate subsidies, big hundreds of millions, billions of dollars, types of dollars to big corporations. What you're coming in here today is asking for not simply a promotion of this product, but it is still a peanut level incentive of taking away from the free market and compelling taxpayers to fund and create a new atmosphere within the economy, further distorting the market, albeit a peanut level compared to the overwhelming corporate handouts that we give to big corporations, but it's still a centrally planning process and one that's further eroding our society.
And honestly, I would like you to view it this way. The unique part of this isn't a handout, which a lot of times those are. It's really an investment because a lot of those dollars are going to come back in.
That's for investors to invest in, not to compel taxpayers, but thank you.
Fair enough.
Representative Preston.
Please don't take any offense to what I had said. My issue is strictly around safety. I'm not against biofuels whatsoever, but it needs to be done safe. On my end of the UP, Senator McBroom's a good friend, suffers the same issues that you do as far as on the farm. Small business owner myself for over 20 years, I understand it, and I understand 7-day-a-week work. But at the end of the day, on our side, we get a lot of fuel in from Minnesota. Minnesota's incredibly aggressive on biofuel, and we have had serious issues with black mold in our bulk tanks, in our semis, in our tractors. And I would ask you, would you run 100% bio in your tractor?
I'll answer that honestly. First of all, it's not available to us.
Would
locally.
you, though? I know it's not.
With today's technology, I'd feel much more comfortable doing that. I will address that directly and say that if you'd asked me that 10 years ago, I would have told you no. There, several years ago, much earlier on in the biofuel industry, there were some significant issues with that. I
Being
think
a truck
that's very,
stop, being a
very
truck
fair.
stop owner, I will just tell you that really nothing's changed. They've brought in some biocides that can be added to the fuel as you put it in, but not much is saying the microbes are still there, the water is still there, and the fuel that feeds those microbes are still there. And once it gets in your tank, you know it's almost impossible to get out. So this, for me, this is just all about safety. It's not about where this comes from.
Understood.
Representative Words.
Thank you. Thank you for being here today. As a fellow agriculture producer, I appreciated your honesty and your sentiments and how hard it is to make it in agriculture today is for real. And I think it's fitting that we have a lot of young people here who've probably never heard that. And that if we looked back 100 years ago in our society, 150 years ago, we're primarily an agrarian entity here. That's where most of all of us, our great-great-grandparents grew up on farms, and that has now become less than 2% of the population. So I think your story is very important and relevant. So first, I want to thank you for that. My second thought here, and I guess question, so when I look at the numbers here, the state's invested $210 million of taxpayer dollars to the Ford plant in Marshall, which now may or may not even happen. We're hearing last week. So I think you're asking for $9 million annually after, I guess, a $4.5 million. Is that enough? And how will it, do you foresee it genuinely helping agriculture and you as a producer? Do you think it's going to increase the market enough for you to actually make a living? Or do we need to, and I somewhat understand where Rep. Carr is coming from. I have some similar feelings on that, and that's why I've asked, how is this directly going to help the producer? Because tax credits are great, but we've given a lot of tax credits to corporations, even the solar credits that now are probably going to cease to exist, which I'm thankful for because it halts what's happening in my district of a lot of people renting their ground to solar because that's the one way they can, shore up some financial income. Yep. But is this enough? Is it a realistic approach? Do you feel like that will fix some of the issues?
I'm a pretty straight shooter. This was a discussion that before today, I'd had the opportunity to talk with some folks supporting this, and I have a contention that it's really not enough. But I am willing to step forward with this because I think ultimately what it does is send a signal to producers, and I mean ATJ, alcohol-to-jet producers. And I think that's moreover what I'm trying to go for here, is if we get a producer that says, okay, this market can be viable in Michigan because they've made investment, because Delta and others, United, whoever's using that fuel, has the opportunity for that investment. As they said, Delta's not going to get the money, right? But the producer or the blender is going to, and what that's doing is offsetting Delta's cost. And so that gives them incentive to utilize it and utilize it more quickly. So my viewpoint on this is you're right. It probably isn't enough. I'd like to see 3, 4, 5 times that much. Recognizing, however, at the end of the day, that my goal is not necessarily to support that whole system, but to send a signal that we can do that. I think the one point that I want to make sure that we're all pretty clear on, that cost right now is significantly higher than, petroleum-based Jet A, because we've had no time for this technology to advance and make efficiencies. As an example, 20 years ago when ethanol was fairly new, ethanol needed a subsidy to be competitive, right? Because the technology wasn't there to make it competitive from a production standpoint. This is no different. This is going to take time. It's going to take technological development. And at some point, I really have no doubt that this will end up being the same thing as with ethanol. Ethanol lowers your price at the pump. That's a fact. And so I think in time, if we send this signal, Representative, I think what it's going to do is it will create that demand just because we have some of that technological advancement.
Wouldn't it be nice if we could get half of the, 105 million that they gave Ford? Thank you.
We got a couple of more questions, but due to time constraints, we're going to end it right there. I want to thank you both, John and Scott, for your time and for your testimony on this legislation, and I appreciate it. I'm going to read in just a few additional cards quickly. Not wishing to speak, supporting the bill, Ed Rivet from the Michigan Conservation Energy Forum. Not wishing to speak, supporting the bill, BP. Not wishing to speak, supporting the bill, Kent Hartvig from GEVO. Not wishing to speak, supporting the bill, Brian Shelf, Detroit Regional Chamber. And finally, not wishing to speak, supporting the bill, Andrew Fermish from Michigan Farm Bureau. All right. Finally up is Representative John Damoose to testify on Senate Bill 41. Senator, whenever you're ready, and apologies for the delay a little bit.
Thank you so much. No, that was fascinating to listen to. I enjoyed it. Listen, I'm so proud to be able to testify in favor of Senate Bill 41, which is an effort to honor the brave soldiers of Company K of the 1st Michigan Sharpshooters in the Civil War. The bill passed the Senate unanimously in March 6th. I'm so thankful, Mr. Chairman, to you and to everybody on this committee to be willing to take up this bill. It means so much to the Anishinaabe residents of my district and to the whole state. Company K was a group of Native American sharpshooters assembled during the Civil War from various places throughout Michigan, but especially in the northern Michigan regions, which I represent. It was our own Michigan legislature who originally rejected the idea in 1861 to recruit a regiment of Native Americans simply because they were Native Americans. But when recruiting demands increased and the Civil War intensified in 1863, our state changed its tune and authorized the effort. Keep in mind, the members of Company K joined the fight to free oppressed citizens while they themselves faced their own oppression. They knew what they were fighting for because they lived it. My bill simply recognizes their service by naming a highway in honor of them in Leelanau County, an area filled with their descendants. The hope is that as people drive by, they'll see the sign and take a moment and remember the sacrifices made for them by a group of people who too often do not receive the recognition they deserve in American histories. I'm hopeful to have the support of this committee, and I know that Scott Schwander, who's a member of the Grand Traverse Bay of Ottawa and Chippewa Indians, is going to testify for us. He can explain more details, but he's the one who's really been driving this effort the past several years, so thank you.
Excellent. And is Scott online now?
Yes, sir. Scott Schwander is on board.
Scott, proceed whenever you're ready, sir, and we appreciate you testifying.
Thank you, sir. So let me get adjusted here. My name is Scott, S-C-O-T-T, Schwander, S-C-H-W-A-N-D-E-R. I am in Traverse City, and I'm just healing from a medical procedure. I would much rather prefer to be there with all of you as opposed to being here at the moment, but I guess I'm doing the best I can. All being said, the medical procedure went fantastic, and I have no worries, but that's why I'm not there. So please excuse my absence, and I do believe that given the circumstances, I'd much rather be there to shake hands, look people in the eye, and it would kind of add to the character of the story. So you have my name, Scott Schwander. I'm 61 years old. I'm a retired deputy sheriff out of Grand Traverse County. I did all 25 years on the road. I have PTSD. Not surprising, being a policeman for 25 years. I am also a boarding school survivor of the Holy Childhood Indian Boarding School, also located in Harbor Springs. I have to tell you that that is another contributing factor, but anything that you may have heard about Native American boarding schools is true. So, very quickly here, to provide treatment for myself without using medication that comes from a prescription bottle, I restore military and historic headstones in cemeteries. And since my retirement 10 years ago, I have just restored my 3000th headstone. So that's what I do to keep myself busy, and that's how I continue to give back. So let's move right on. In order to move forward, though, we have to go backwards. The Civil War broke out in 1861, as you know, and there was a quota in the state of Michigan. Each of the 83 counties at that time had a quota that they had to fulfill, and there was a bonus for the soldier who was enlisting. When the call went out to service in 1861, several Native American men, seeing the opportunity to earn some money, as well as serve for a number of reasons, attempted to join the Civil War, or the United States Army, rather, and they were turned away. In fact, a man named Thomas Cachitigo, who was from Saginaw and now buried in Elmwood Cemetery in Grayling, was told, "Sorry, we are not taking your kind right now." So he was turned away, and the war raged on. In or about 1864, somebody had a brilliant idea. They said, "What about these Native American men? These Native American men, they already know how to bivouac. They speak another language. They know how to provide. They live off the land. Let's try enlisting, or let's try recruiting some Native American men." Almost overnight, 139 men, including one man from Canada, came down, and they joined. At that point, they received a $50 bonus. Now, you have to understand, they could not enlist in the Civil War. These men were not yet United States citizens. They had to volunteer. Citizenship would not come until 1924, 60 years after the war. So they volunteered, and they received their $50 enlistment bonus, and most of them sent that $50 home so their families could eat. So Company K was formed, and the first thing that Company K did was reported to Fort Dearborn. There, in their basic training, they learned how to drill, how to march, and most importantly, they had to qualify to meet the training standard. One of those training standards, in order to be a sharpshooter or a modern day sniper as we would know them today, would be to hit a 5-inch dinner plate with a black powder rifle at the distance of 200 yards. And all 139 men passed. So after the basic training was over, they were sent to Camp Douglas in Chicago, which was a Union, it was a Union-run Confederate prisoner of war camp. It doesn't exist anymore, but that's exactly where they were sent. They were sent to Chicago. Now, shortly after that, they were sent to General Grant's overland campaign involving Petersburg, the Battle of the Cradle, the Battle of the Wilderness, and Gettysburg. And during that time, 15 men were captured, and taken to Andersonville Confederate prison. 7 died there. They were still there. Uh, Things were rough in Andersonville. It was said that one man would vomit from the infested food that he had to digest in order to survive. And while he would vomit, other men would be there to spoon it up so they didn't die as well. Two of those men that went on to this Company K were relatives of mine. My great great grandfather, Marcus, and his brother Solomon Otto, both of them from Isabella County. Marcus had his right arm shot off. He had his right arm shot, and it was removed in a field hospital in the Battle of the Wilderness, St. Mary's Heights, Virginia, or thereabouts. So he came home with one arm. Now, he received a pension from a grateful nation, but that gratitude did not extend until citizenship. As a matter of fact, my grandpa Marcus Otto died in 1924, and he wasn't offered citizenship until 1924, 59 years. Well, actually, 20 years after he passed, he was recognized as a U.S. citizen. So the Civil War is over now. It's 160 years. And what I would tell you and ask of you in talking about our United States Army then was that these 139 men, some of them are still on battlefields, locations unknown, never to be returned. A great deal of them live in Emmett County. I mean, are buried in Emmett County, some in Grand Traverse, some in Leelanau County. And this is something that's very important to the tribal people of the state of Michigan. Additionally, there is no highway in the United States dedicated to Native American Civil War veterans. So this would be the only designated renaming of a highway within the United States. And the Grand Traverse Band of Ottawa and Chippewa Indians is on board with this 100% and have had their fingers crossed through 2 administrations. So I would just ask that when you leave the Capitol building today, you will go to a corner or look for a statue, and there you will see a man with a rifle or the statue of a man with a rifle peering over a rock. And that is a Michigan sharpshooter. And it is that unit that we're talking about. The Native American men, the first Michigan sharpshooters of Company K. And I would just ask that you support this bill and this endeavor so the history is not forgotten, because it's very important we remember that history is our future. Now, I'll take any questions if anybody has any.
We do have a question for you, Scott. Really appreciate you being on. Thank you for sharing the story of Company K. They were involved in some pretty rough campaigns, it sounds like, and we really, really appreciate their service to this country, and I think this would be a great way to honor them. We have a question now from Representative Brock.
Thank
Yes,
you,
sir.
Chair, and thank you for your testimony. My question revolves around the cost of the signage. Do you have funding in place, or how are you going to collect the money or raise the money for the signage?
The Grand Traverse Band of Ottawa and Chippewa Indians is ready to cut a check today. The going rate for a highway dedication road sign is $4,000. And the sign itself has actually already been drafted and written out by the Department of Transportation. It's just a matter of following the procedural steps to get this passed and the signature of the governor. So there are certainly means to pay for the bill and the ambition, the sign, as well as the desire to have it completed. I can guarantee you they would cut a check right now if they were able to.
That is awesome. Well, thank you so much, very much, and this is definitely well deserved and been waiting for a very, very long time to recognize Company K. And so we appreciate your ancestors' service to our country and the continued fight that you do. Thank you, sir.
And personally, I appreciate everything that you all do. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
Thank you so much, Scott. We appreciate your testimony and thank you for your years of service as a law enforcement officer as well. We do have one card to read in. Not wishing to speak, neutral on the bill. Max Albach from MDOT. Okay. Vice Chair Hershberg moves to report Senate Bill 41 with recommendation. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Chair Outman.
Yes.
Representatives Alexander.
Yes.
Cara.
Yes.
Bruck.
Yay.
Kuntz.
Aye.
Neyer.
Yes.
Preston.
Yes.
Bonak.
Yes.
Frisbee.
Yes.
Wertz.
Yes.
Hersberg.
Yes.
Hope.
Yes.
Colazar.
Yes.
Andrews.
Yes.
Grant.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Wilson. Mr. Chair, you have 16 yeas, 0 nays, and 0 pass. Senate Bill 41 is reported with recommendation.
Senate Bill 41 is reported with recommendation. Before we adjourn, it looks like we have a bunch of students from Traverse City. I want to give a quick shout out to you guys. Thank you for being here. There being no further business before the committee stands adjourned.